Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with drummer, producer, and composer Curtis Nosawad. Originally from Winnepeg, Canada, and now in New York City, he went all over the verbal map to explain his life as a kid playing the piano to the current day as he busily promotes his new album, Dialectics, as a drummer. Over the course of our interview, he talked about his jazz heroes, his theory on teaching, what's the greatest thing about waking up every day, what may be next, and many more cool stories and surprises. Dig it, my friends. First of all, thank you for taking a little time to speak with me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate you calling.
Absolutely, man. Let's go ahead and start off here. What has been going on with you lately?
Well, I released a new album in March. That's Dialectics. And I actually just graduated from my master's in Manhattan School of Music a couple weeks ago. And I will be touring Canada with my quintet, which in this case is featuring everyone from the record except for Jimmy Green. John Gordon will be playing saxophone. Derek Gardner trumpet, Steve Kirby on bass, and Will Bonus on piano. We'll be touring Canada, and we're going coast to coast, all the way from Victoria as far west as you can go to Halifax as far east as you can go. So it should be a busy summer. And in between all that, just playing around New York, we did a CD release in Winnepeg, where I'm from. In March, we did 2 CD release gigs here in New York. We did a Rockwood Music Hall at Shapeshifter Lab. And, just trying to keep busy.
Right on. So Dialectics is your second release as a leader. Tell me a little bit about what it was like to get away from your freshman release and just kind of the creative energy that went into this album.
Yeah, I mean, in between the first album and the second one, my writing really grew a lot. I really developed as a composer. I always liked arranging songs. I always liked finding songs that I wanted to hear, and that's why the first album is primarily pop songs. It's everything from Michael Jackson to Bob Marley to Joni Mitchell to Tupac. It's anything that I thought would sound good with the jazz quintet like that. So so I'd always done a lot of arranging, and that was getting better and better. But then my composing, I hadn't, I'd always done it, but it really, there are only 2 original compositions on the first album. So in between that and the second one, there's 3 years in between. And I really started just writing and challenging myself, like saying, one thing was I'm going to write 24 blueses and just see how different I can make them, and things like that. Or I'm going to write a song based on these chord changes, or I'm going to do this or that. And so then from there, now having done my, I decided to go back to school and studied even more of that and started writing for larger ensembles and things like that. So I wrote for studio orchestra, I wrote for big band and all that kind of stuff. So I think that even, as much development as there's been between the first album and this one, writing the music for the second one, I think that there's going to be, even more development still. So,
absolutely. So I'm going to go back to what you said about Canada. You grew up in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Tell me what it was like in Winnipeg to kind of the environment there to foster you to really love jazz and to want to be a musician.
Yeah. Well, there were some really lucky things that happened. First of all, my mother's a piano teacher. My father was in the Canadian Air Force, but he loved jazz and he played, in community bands. There was a community big band he played in, and he played saxophone and clarinet. So I sort of grew up hearing it, and grew up being around people who were involved in music. My sister was involved in music, for a while, and all this stuff. So I was already sort of in a musical environment. I tried out a few different instruments. I tried trumpet, and I tried playing saxophone, and I tried taking piano lessons from my mom, which was a mistake, things like that, which I ended up, which hurt me later, talking about composing and arranging. I wish that I had learned piano from the beginning, but once I hit drums, there was no question, you know. So, and I had the opportunity of having good, you know, band directors at school and people that really actually cared. And then the timing kind of worked out perfectly because the great bass player Steve Kirby moved to Winnipeg while I was in high school to start directing the jazz studies program at the University of Manitoba. Yeah. And so he played with. He's actually from St. Louis originally, so he's a Missourian.
Yeah.
But he you know, he spent a long time in New York, and then you know, he toured with all kinds of people, Travis Chestnut, Abbey Lincoln. He spent 2 years in Elton Jones's band. So for me, you know, learning from him, like having him pass on stuff directly from Elton Jones made a huge difference. And it's just a really valuable resource. But basically in the end, you know, I started, you know, sort of finding out outside of like playing in a big band at school, sort of understanding like the whole culture of jazz behind like going to a jam session and playing with people and knowing tunes and doing all this stuff. So I sort of showed up and basically learned how to play from Steve, kind of like stomping his foot and yelling at me and telling me to lay out when it sucked. And you know, ultimately I ended up, you know, going to school and ended up playing in Steve's band and, you know, being, you know, having him be, you know, one of my closest mentors, and then getting a chance to study with guys like Jerry Gully and Quincy Davis, who both taught at the school at different times, and getting to just hook up with people who came through town and all that. So, you know, it was really a valuable experience, and Winnipeg is such that it's actually a very large, like, you know, it's 700,000 people, so it's not a huge city, but there's a very large artistic community within the city. Part of it could be because it's so cold in the winter, you know, people just stay inside and you know, practice. But for some reason there's, you know, there are a lot of, the community is really large, so it really, and sort of the various communities within that all sort of overlap with each other, so you sort of get a chance to do a lot of different things as well. So I played, you know, all kinds of music, rock and R&B and, you know, reggae gigs, and played on country records and did all this stuff. So it's sort of all kind of, you know, sort of you know, you realize the more you do all these different things, the more you realize it's all connected anyway.
So why did you finally land on jazz? What was it that really was the clincher for jazz for you?
You know, that's hard to say. You know, I mean, it just sort of really, like, when I really first went to, you know, like I was saying, I guess, so Kirby moved up when I was 15, and one of the big things that he did, not just teaching at the school, was he started a weekly jam session in the city that ended up being like you know, this, you know, for a long time, it ended up being like where, you know, kind of all the hip people, like outside of music as well, all were like, oh, there's this jam session, and it's started by this guy from New York, and it became this whole thing. And so I remember going there, you know, when I was 15, with a friend of mine, and just having never experienced anything like it, even playing in jazz band at school or whatever we had at school. I had never seen anything like, you know, a real, like, jazz jam session with, you know, cats from New York and all that. So there's something about that really, like, you know, just the culture of it was really what was amazing to me, you know. So, and that really, you know, that really changed the culture of the city, like, to accept jazz on a much larger level, you know.
Yeah. So when you were a kid, did you always dream about being a musician, or were there other aspirations?
I wouldn't say always, but probably from about 10 or 11, you know, especially from about the time that I heard Led Zeppelin. That was like the first, you know, because that was like my first, those are really, got me excited about music in the first place. So that was like my, you know, I was into Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath and all the, you know, all the stuff that I, you know, wore out listening to that. But then, you know, so I was already very into music by the time I checked out the, you know, what I was talking about, the experience of the jam session, but it just sort of took me left a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So you talked about playing the piano when you were really young. Why did you ultimately choose the drums?
It's hard. I mean, my joke answer is always because I get to hit things for a living. But but I think that there is something very visceral about it, about the drums. Like, people want to, you have friends who are non-musicians or whatever, and they want to sit down and they just want to, they want to hit drums, or people are it's either one or the other. They either sit down and are super timid, just want to tap everything, or else they want to go nuts and hit everything. I think that there's like a visceral desire to, hit things and be loud and just, express yourself that way. And I just love the feeling of, providing the rhythm for the group, really like laying in the pocket and really, really connecting with people on that level. And from the drums, that's the most, that's the most intimately connected to that feeling,
You talked about the influence that Steve had on you, but you've shared the stage also with cats like Stefan Harris, Jack Wilkins, Dave Douglas, Jimmy Owens, Kenny Barron. What has it been like to be around such jazz luminaries like them, to share the stage and be a part of that energy?
It's it's very cool, and each one is a learning experience in its own way, and everyone's, I think that being around guys from, some of those guys are younger, like Stefan Harris, which he's just amazing, and he's one of the great thinkers of this, generation of music. He's got the whole harmonic and rhythmic, system of his own that he's come up with, so, and he's virtuosic, but he's also, it's a very human way of approaching music as well. So you got someone like that, but what I do find playing with much older guys, talking about Kenny Barron or Jimmy Owens or Jack Wilkins or some of those guys, Dave Douglas. The more you realize that guys were a lot more original back in the day, and not to say that we're not original now, but I think that each person was, I shouldn't say original, I mean each person is more individual. Like each person really has got their own vibe and their own way of going about things. It's all coming out of the same lineage, but people were really more individual, and I think that's a very natural consequence of jazz education. I think it's amazing that you're able to go to a university and get in my case, get a master's degree in jazz. That's incredible. Yeah. But I do think that when guys were learning it the way they were, there's a story about Kenny Barron running to and from, running 2 or 3 blocks down the street in Philadelphia to a bar that had a jukebox with a Horace Silver record on it, and running, 2 blocks down the street with a pocket full of nickels, putting the quarter in, listening to a little bit of solo, running home, figuring it out, running back to the bar, putting in his nickel, listening to a little bit more, running home, figuring it out. That's guys were learning it however they could from whatever means they could. And I think that it got filtered out in a more individual way than the way that we do now, which I think that it's a good thing. I think that being able to have access to the information is an amazing thing. I just think that we approach the music differently as a result. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've played at a lot of places in both the U.S. and Canada. You've been at Smalls, Dizzy's Coca-Cola, Club Coca-Cola, all over the place at festivals. Is there a place that you specifically think that, God, if I could get a call back from them, or, man, I really, really dug jamming at that specific place? Is there any place like that?
Sure. So some of those are ongoing relationships. So, playing at Smalls is always a great experience, and that's really a family, So so going there, and whenever I get to perform there, which I do every other week, but we hope to even more. it's really like that's like the vibe there, and just the full-on commitment to music is really, really incredible. But outside of Smalls, which is really like the, sort of the jazz corner of New York, at this point, and perhaps of the world, some of the other experiences have been great. I mean, playing at the BIM House in Amsterdam was a really, really, really exceptional experience. And yeah, the playing on some of these stages, like, playing on big outdoor stages, like I played at the Ottawa and Montreal Jazz Festival last year with my group, and like, just being able to play, in Ottawa, it's like in Confederation Park, so it's this huge park in the middle of the city, and there's people out everywhere, So being able to play for like a crowd that big, and then Montreal, like, playing for a whole, that festival is so unique that, just playing for like a crowd of people who are that, invested in the music, and they're all listening, and they're all going to go buy your CD after, having experiences like that are really, really amazing. But, nothing beats playing for the hometown crowd as well. So
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I'm going to kind of switch gears here a little bit. It almost seems like journeyman jazz cats kind of have the title of educator at the end of their resume, so to speak. As an educator and a clinician, what do you try to teach the kids that you're imparting your wisdom on?
Well, it depends what level they're at. I think that one of the biggest things is repetition. I think is one of the most important things, is learning how to, is repetition and focus, making sure that when you're doing something, you're doing it right. You're not like, oh yeah, it's close enough, whatever. Oh, I did it a few times, it's great. Like, to really get the stuff together, you have to really be focused on it and really be seeing the difference between doing it right and doing it wrong, and then do it a million times. But even above that, I think that respect for the music and an interest in the history is one of the biggest things that I try to impart. Whether I'm successful or not is another thing, but for me, it's like I can see, I've studied music from, all, the whole American tradition, the whole, jazz and R&B and hip-hop, and studied Afro-Cuban music, and studied Brazilian music, and studied, some North and West African music. And there are so many threads between that music that I really try to get people to see that it's really all connected, and there's threads that run through all of that. And if you can really try to channel that whenever you're playing, then they'll just have that much more depth and that much more, it'll speak to more people.
Sure. So in that vein, who taught you the most about music?
Well, that is definitely hard to say. I've had some very great teachers, but I'll give you a list of the people that I learned the most from, and the people I've had the closest experiences with. So I mean, I have to start with my folks, but then from there, who are the people that I've learned the most from? Definitely Steve Kirby. I mentioned Terry Gully, who I learned from at the University of Manitoba. There was Terry Gully, Quincy Davis, and there was also Siobhan Gilliam, who's now the timpanist in the National Symphony Orchestra in Washington, D.C. He played in the Winnepeg Symphony prior to that. So I learned a ton from all of them while studying at the University of Manitoba. Since coming here, John Riley he was my teacher at Manhattan School of Music. It was Bobby Sanabria, and I was playing the Afro-Cuban Jazz Orchestra with him. And he really, speaking of someone who's connected to the history every single time they play, like Bobby is a bona fide historian,
Yeah.
And his wife is a cultural anthropologist as well. So between the two of them, like, it's amazing how much information they have, So it's a really like a real wealth of knowledge. But I think that's sort of like the list of the people that I've had the closest relationships with. But there are a lot more that I'm leaving out as well. You know, sometimes the most significant things you learn in a 15-minute encounter with someone.
Yeah.
You know,
true.
So
True.
it's it's an interesting process.
Yeah, it is.
Play,
for sure.
You know?
For sure. So to broaden your titles of what you've done in your life, you've been a radio host as well on UMFM 101.5.
Yeah.
Tomorrow is the question. Tell me a little bit about, do you still do radio? What allured you to get into radio? Kind of give me a little backdrop.
Oh, you know, I mean, part of the thing was, you know, this was before I had left Winnipeg, and I sort of did, you know, it was sort of reaching a point where I sort of knew that I might be leaving at some point, but what I really was trying to do absolutely everything I could within that community. And part of that was, you know, I obviously enjoy listening to music, and I love the idea of hipping other people to the music, you know, saying this is this record, it's from this year, here's a colorful story about the album, you know, that kind of stuff. And so, you know, I had been friends with the guys at that station for a long time, and they, you know, finally I stopped in one day to talk to them, and they said, you know, why don't you do a show? We need someone for primetime spot, you know, and no one around here knows jazz better than you do, so come in and do this thing and whatever. So, like, yeah, okay, I guess I'll try it, and I loved it, you know. You know, when people, you know, when people call in and they say that, you know, they love what you're playing and stuff like that, it's a good feeling, you know, and it's fun to have your friends on and talk to them and, you know, have them bring their music, and then you learn more and more and more as you go, you know. But I haven't done any radio since I moved to New York, but I did have, outside of doing radio interviews, but I did have a really good experience on WKCR, which is the Columbia University station. So I don't live too far from there. I live, you know, probably 10, 12 blocks north of there. But so I ended up being invited to come on WKCR. And, you know, I come in and, you know, we're playing some songs from my first album, from my second album, you know, and we're talking about that, talking about a show or two that I was doing and whatever. And then, but they had told me before, you know, that there's a library of, you know, 10,000 LPs or something like that, you know, so show up early. So I show up early and I get a huge stack of records and come out, you know, just pick out some of my favorite stuff, some stuff I've never even heard before, you know, bunch of things, show up. And so we're talking about my music, and then I sort of like, they're like, oh, so if you want to play something out of the pile, and then for like 2 hours, I basically took over the radio station and was like telling stories about all this stuff, like it made me really miss it, you know. So I wouldn't be against the idea of doing something.
Yeah, very cool. Let me ask you this: who would you consider your jazz heroes? People that you've listened to that they hit you the right way, and you're like, man, those are the ones.
All right. Well, outside of the ones like Charlie Parker, John Coltrane, Miles Davis, Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong, outside of like those being sort of the, you know, perhaps we could say the big five. Of course, I'm leaving out so many, but those being ones that are indisputable. I think that ones that have really gotten to me, you know, be Wayne Shorter would be one, Thelonious Monk, you know, on my instrument, definitely Tony Williams and Elvin Jones, really get to me, you know. And Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers was really like, that's really the band that really made me want to do this, you know, once I started listening to the music and everything. Art Blakey was kind of the one that I really wanted to have a band like that. I really wanted to play that kind of music, that kind of intensity. But but yeah, you know, it's such a deep and rich lineage. There's so many heroes within that, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
So trying to be a part of that, really.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. I was thinking about, you know, Miles Davis, there's a quote that says it takes a long time to find out what you're trying to say with your music, like your style, so to speak. And I'm wondering with you, you know, musicians always talk about the sound, the originality of the sound that they put out, you know, whether it's Elvin Jones or Miles or Park. What are you trying to say with your music? I mean, what's the message that you want people to get from what you're playing?
See, Miles is right. It takes a long time.
Yeah.
But it's starting to become clearer. I mean, I really I you know, when I play, I do really want people to hear that connection to the history that I was talking about. I want people to sort of, you know, a good musical experience can make the average person like assess their, you know, their connection to society and their connection to, like, in their closest relationships. You know, it's amazing how music can make people change the way they think and feel, you know. So I really think that, like, ultimately I just want people to feel good. I want people to treat other people right, you know. So I sort of want, you know, whether we're swinging or whether we're playing like something pocket or playing whatever, you know, playing something Latin, doing whatever, doesn't matter what it is. I just want it to feel good, and I want it to connect to people. And as a result, I want people to take good vibes away from the performance or from listening to the album, and I want them to, you know, just use it to, like, you know, maybe the next person they talk to, they're just a little bit nicer to, you know. I think that's really, you know, and maybe to question why someone else might be in a position that they're in that they don't realize why they're in that position, you know, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, cool. So let's say, just because, you know, we're in the Kansas City mindset here, sometimes we kind of get bespeckled by the 18 and Vine notion, and you mentioned Smalls and the absolute hub of jazz in the world. And I'm thinking,
right.
you get done with the show, you come outside, you got this DeLorean sitting there, and you can punch the digits in this DeLorean to go back in time. And you can see any show, any jazz show. Where would you set the destination, and who would you want to see?
I think it would be a toss-up. It would be a toss-up between, I think, one second.
Sure.
It would be a toss-up between, I think, the Jazz at Massey Hall concert in Toronto with, you know, Charlie Parker, what was it, Charlie Parker, Gillespie, Bud Powell,
yeah.
Charles Mingus, and Max Roach. That's one of them. Another one would be really any, you know, the next one would be, it would be hard to pinpoint the day. I would have to do more research to pinpoint the day, but one would be, you know, to hear John Coltrane Quartet in full effect. The other one would be to hear Miles' second quintet with Tony Williams and you know, Wayne Shorter, Ron Carter, Herbie Hancock. Hear that band. You know, I think that those would be sort of three. Well, you know, it depends. Do I get to stay in the time, or do I just hear the concert and go back to my real life?
Probably just a gig, yeah. And, you know, maybe you can bounce around. Maybe it's an all-day pass, you know.
Yeah. Either way, you know, it's one of those things. There are definitely some periods in history that would be great to see. I'd love to just be on 52nd Street and see, you know, actually see, because, I mean, there's so much lore, you know, and go to Mittens back in the day. You know, it's great that Mittens is a historical site and the club is open again, you know, and it's and people are playing there and everything. It's you know, it's great to be in that building and soak up that energy. But, you know, I would love to, like, go back and actually see what it's like outside of all the stories that everyone has told, you know, actually be there and see.
Yeah,
see what happens.
absolutely. Yeah. So let me ask you this. What's the greatest thing about waking up every day?
Mm, what is the greatest thing about waking up every day, other than waking up next to my beautiful wife? I would have to say the fact that I get to play music. You know, that's what I get to spend my time doing. You know, it's pretty fantastic. I'm about to head out and practice for a little while. So
cool. So I got a couple more questions. So let's say we hook up in 10 years and we talk, and I ask you, first of all, tell me what's been going on. What are you going to want to tell me happened in the last decade?
Well, you know, I mean, I would hope that I'd be working more and kind of doing more of what I'm doing, just perhaps on a larger scale. I'm hoping to travel more. You know, hopefully I'll be in between tours. You know, and would hope to see some other parts of the world that I haven't seen yet. So that would be, that would really be, I'd hope to be doing, but, you know, more or less hope to be doing pretty much what I'm doing now, but better.
Yeah. So let's say after one of your shows, someone comes up, they buy a CD, they go home, they listen to it, they want to get to know you a little bit more. What would be the perfect Google search to sum up who you are? If they typed your name into Google and put bio after it, and the best, 2 or 3 sentence bio that could come up, who are you? What would it be ideal for them to know about who you are?
I would have to go with musician, historian, and the third word, I'm not sure. Being a musician is more important to me than being a drummer, and I'm as I've mentioned a bunch of the times, you know, that history is very important to me as well.
Yeah.
But sometimes the conversation with me can read like Trivial Pursuit. I was laughing with a friend of mine last night because, you know, for each topic that we came up with, I had like a factoid. You know, so we were, you know, I was like, all right, I'm gonna end this now and spare you any more factoids. But definitely, you know, I'm trying to think of a better word to go with it, but I can't think of it. Either way, you know, I would want to be known as someone that really knows the history and really, wants to pass on that information.
Perfect, man. Curtis, hey,
all right,
man, it was great to catch up with you.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in New York City, Kansas City, and spots all over America, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Curtis for his enthusiasm, quality music, and storytelling. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store, or you can visit theneonjazz.blogspot.com for all things Neon Jazz. Until next time, enjoy the music, my friends.
Neon Jazz.